Hey guys, welcome to another show in tech. I'm Mike. This is Dev.
And today we've got a little bit different take on what we've been doing. Um, I've got a piece of tech here, and Mike's kind of going after I talk about it. His subject is kind of a deep dive on where this particular tech is heading towards.
Right. Along with another piece of tech I talked about a couple videos ago.
Right. So this kind of brings a few things together and just kind of links it all together. So it'd be kind of should be a fun topic. So how about we just jump right into it then?
All right, sounds good. Why don't you go ahead today?
All right. So what I've got here is an external Blu-ray disc drive, and a lot of people are like, "Why do you need that? Who uses CDs or DVDs or Blu-rays with their computer anymore?" And I've thought of a couple different use cases, but one that is getting kind of near and dear to me, well, not near and dear to me, but for my wife, that's going to be an issue here real soon, is she's really into photography,
Right.
and loading up a bunch of hard drives can get quick and expensive.
Right. Absolutely.
But if you've got a disk drive, you could potentially load up a whole bunch of photos on some Blu-ray disc
Absolutely.
and have great storage. And there's a bunch of other stuff, like if you're needing to reinstall Windows. So like you were having some Windows install issues.
Right. I had.
And
Go ahead.
yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, you can use a thumb drive, but sometimes you may just not have a thumb drive laying around. And if you've got the CD, a disk drive, or you even have an internal disk drive, which
Right.
you don't see on PCs at all anymore.
No, not at all.
It's just some different stuff you can do with this, and I've got a bunch of other actually use cases. We can go in this, but
Okay.
the main reason I bought this is building up my Plex media server with all my Blu-rays and DVD movies that I have.
Yeah.
So I need some way to get those files off those discs.
Right. Absolutely.
And if you don't have a disk drive, you can't do that.
Exactly.
So that was my main purpose. And again, we're going to be putting, hopefully a bunch of my wife's, older photos, stuff that's, 10, 8, 9, 10
Right.
years old.
Right.
That, we're not going back and looking at as much, but it's something we don't want to delete.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And having it on like a physical disc is a lot safer than, a hard drive.
Right. And especially in a storage situation too, because, one of the cons that I could see about that is eventually, discs go bad, sometimes they get scratched or stuff like that. But if it's older stuff like you're talking about that you still want to save, but you don't necessarily want to take up the space on your hard drive and stuff, that's a perfect format for that. Because if it's in a case, if it's up on the shelf, nobody's really messing with it. You may take it down once a year or something to look through some old photos or print off some old photos to do for a scrapbook or something like that. So, I mean, it's going to last, the disc is still going to last infinitely longer than if it were one of the things where it's like, okay, I need to write some more data to this. I need to read some more data from this. It's not going through its processes, so it's not going to get scratched up. It's not going to, go through a memory, not wipe, but like memory.
Right, get
format.
overwritten or something for something else by mistake.
Absolutely. So that's not a bad application for Blu-rays, especially with Blu-rays now, because Blu-rays can hold a fuck ton of information.
Right. And speaking of that, you've got different kinds of Blu-ray discs actually. You've got your single layer, which go up to like 20, 25 gigs.
Right.
You've got the double layers, which go to about 50 gigs. And then you've got the quad layers that go up to 100, 125 gigs of data.
Absolutely.
And when you're talking pictures, just photos, you can get a lot of photos on a 125 gig disc.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking
a
about
lot.
Tens of thousands of photos.
Exactly. So, I mean, that's just...
At least until we get into, that area where we have much higher quality pictures, which we're moving towards. But for now, I mean, that's tens of thousands of pictures.
Well, right. Even when you're talking about taking, a photo at like, over a 4K resolution.
Right.
Just using a monitor resolution as a figure here. you know, that's still only a few megabytes of photo.
Right. Absolutely.
So I mean, you can just totally load them up. But you know, some things that some people might remember. You know, I know like when we were in high school, there was this thing called what was it, Limewire.
Limewire.
You know,
for all you pirators out there.
right? Making good old fashioned mix CDs.
Mix CDs, Bubba.
Mix CDs. I really wasn't around for mixtapes.
Yeah,
I mean, that was on the very tail end of that.
Like the only reason why I actually did mixtape stuff is because I actually had an old audio system that my dad gave me. And so I would do mixtapes and stuff for that until, every car I rode in didn't have a tape player in it.
Right.
So then you move to the mix CDs.
Right. So, but I mean, what if you found a bunch of those laying around? You're like, man, I wish I had a CD player to put these in.
Right.
Because, not everybody has, CD players in their houses anymore because, everything's moved over to, streaming with like Netflix and Hulu and stuff.
Yeah.
And even your music audio, you've got Spotify, Apple Music, Google Music.
Yeah.
You just don't see CDs as much anymore. I mean, yeah, you go to the store like Walmart and you might see a CD aisle, but look how small that's gotten.
Right. I mean, it's gotten... I remember in high school where we had almost an entire aisle dedicated to CDs, and now that's went down to half of a half aisle, so like a quarter of an aisle,
like half a bay almost.
Yeah, exactly. So,
but there's still a lot of uses for this, and an external one can be, the perfect solution for a lot of people,
right?
Because a lot of people, they'll buy like a pre-built PC, and it may not have a disk drive. I think a lot of the pre-builts still kind of come with one, but they might be like a slot loading or
most
something
of them
like
do,
that.
but there are quite a few more companies that are going to, driveless, disk driveless systems.
And, a lot of people buy laptops. So, think about this. This whole thing is thicker than this laptop. So, it's not going to fit in here. There's no room for a disk drive. So you have to have, an external one, and which is why this one's so great.
And, kind of in that same scenario, like for the longest time, even though I was a huge supporter of Steam and I backed up my library on Steam by buying those games again, for the longest time, like the first copy of something I would buy would still be hard disk. Because if you, like me, live out in a rural area in the middle of nowhere where nobody's around, there's not much internet out there. Right. And so for me to actually download like a new game, that was, say 15, 20 gigabytes, which is kind of the standard nowadays. That was kind of it wasn't doable for me. So I would buy the hard copy of the game, download it off the disc. So, if you go back and you see some of your older games that are still on disc, boom, you got an external disc drive, you just plug it right in, and you can go play some of those old games that may not even be on a certain store.
Right. And, the capabilities of this is actually pretty neat. Like this particular one here, I think this is a Philips Blu-ray rewritable drive. Okay. I think it was like somewhere between 100 and 120.
Okay.
You can kind of find a little bit of fluctuation in that price. I think I found it closer to 100.
Gotcha.
But it's really great because, it can still do CDs, because,
right.
I don't know, other than music CDs, I don't know what's coming on a CD anymore, but you find a random CD-ROM every once in a while.
Right.
It'll read and write Blu-ray disc and DVDs. So, say, maybe you didn't have a TV. You just had your computer in like a small like studio apartment or something.
Right, yeah.
You just had a bigger monitor. You're using that for all your entertainment.
Kind of on the go. Like maybe you're in one of those spots where it's in between like Wi-Fi connections or something and you don't have internet so you can't stream. Well, you got, just a small little section of DVDs you want to bring with you.
Yeah, I was about to say, yeah, maybe you just got, like you said, a small collection of movies. You could plop it in one of these, load it up on, VLC and be good to go watching movies right there on the computer. You don't have to have a big old TV, taking up space, and then got to have a DVD or Blu-ray player, to hook up to it as well. So you've got to have multiple components. But if you already have a PC, just get a disk drive and you're good to go. Exactly. You're not taking up any extra space because you're already going to have the PC anyway.
It's literally one extra little box and a cord, and that's it.
Right. So I mean, there's just so many different, applications that it could be handy for. It's just one of those things. Like how many times, like, you might be just sitting at your computer, you're thinking about, man, if I had a disk drive to, make a copy of this, or, if you had a random CD or movie or something, you're like, man, I wish I had a disk drive so I could either, like, copy to this to my computer,
Right.
To put it on your phone. It's like, as a hard copy on your phone to watch on the go,
Right.
for like the kids or something, put it on like their tablet or iPad or something like that.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, there's just, it's one of those things. Yeah, you may not see yourself using it, but there's going to be a bunch of those things you're like, man, that would have been handy at the time.
Absolutely. And kind of going back to that previous point we made, a lot of Blu-ray discs come with the keys that you can download a copy of.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things you can do is you can take that disc, pop it in your drive, and write it to your computer. You'll have to activate and everything with that key, but write it to your computer, and then you can have that on the go with you while you're in the car.
Mm-hmm.
So you may not even want to have to bring this with you. You just use this to write it to your laptop, and then you bring that laptop with you in the car. If you got kids like I do and he does, that could be a lifesaver on a road trip.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So I mean, that's just kind of the quick and dirty, just some use cases and whatnot, and just kind of how useful this is. And this particular one doesn't require any external power either. It receives its power straight over the USB 3 interface.
Oh yeah.
I know there's some bigger faster drives that can use an external power, but this particular one doesn't. So I mean, you just plug it into the laptop and it's good to go. And it's just a great piece of thing. And like I said, I've had this one probably for a couple of years now.
Right.
And I've burned every single DVD and Blu-ray movie I have, to put on a hard drive for my Plex, for my in-house streaming stuff.
Right.
And it's been, a pretty good drive. Like I said, it's held up over the years. I really like the Philips drive, and if you do a little research online, like looking for reviews, this one actually comes up quite a bit.
Okay, cool. And honestly, I mean, the format may change, but this type of device will probably always be around in some form or fashion, right? So before the Blu-ray, it was, before anything, it was like the 4.5 millimeter, and then it was 3.5 millimeter floppy drives, and then you had the CDRWs, and now you've got the
even
Blu-rays.
If you go back before that, I mean, it's the exact same technology, just a different thing. But I mean, record disc, it's the exact. I mean, it's the exact same thing. You're just writing. It was obviously doing it a little bit different ways. Something to a physical medium, and then you could replay that back on the same, same type of device that you could record with.
Yeah.
Just play. So I mean, it's the same thing. It's just reiterated over and over and over, and it's just gotten more dense and dense and dense. And like a Blu-ray disc is not as fragile as like a vinyl disc anymore.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I mean, and I think we're just going to keep on evolving. And I think that's kind of what you're going to be talking about here, ain't it?
Right. Yeah. So some of the stuff I'm going to go into today. Well, one of the main things I'm going to go into today is actually about long-term data storage. So we actually had a commenter in one of our previous videos, kudos to him for being ahead of the curve, ask us, what do you think about the future of long-term data storage on Quartz? So I saw a article about it the other day, and I did a little research, and so that's what I'm going to be going into today, is kind of the future of long-term data storage. So there have been a couple different projects working on this. Microsoft Silica is one project. And then there's another project that started out with Hitachi and has moved to another company. I don't remember what the name of that company is. That have come up with quartz coins, literally like size of a coin. They're about 3 inches across. So it's pretty cool little technology. So to begin with, let's talk a little bit about, say, the durability of it. Okay, so quartz is actually rated on the durability scale at a 7, where you have diamond at a 10. So
Right.
quartz is actually a very resilient, which goes into why this would be such a good long-term data storage solution. Okay, so it can withstand their prototype that they've done can withstand up to half a ton of pressure on it, which, if you think about it, is a lot of pressure.
Right.
Okay, so, this is kind of, remember the other day where we talked about solid state storage, we can throw it all around this room and, nothing's going to happen to it, right? So this is kind of going into that, except for more of a disk style. That durability also goes into its scratch resistance as well. So quartz is very highly scratch resistant.
Yeah.
So now what are we talking about with quartz? Are we talking about like just these little quartz crystals you see all over the place? Essentially, yes, but they've been refined with some semiconductors like gold, silver, things of the such, on a nanoscopic level,
Right.
which is pretty cool.
Right. And there's, I think there's another project, where it's more of like a quartz glass too. So I mean, it looks kind of like
Right,
a
that's
glass
the coin.
disc.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and they're like mini discs. They're like, you remember the old DVDs that were like that big?
Right,
They're
like
going to a
GameCube
smaller
games?
format. Right, GameCube games, exactly. they're a little smaller than that. But they're quartz glass, so they work exactly like a disc, like we were talking about with this. Now, let's talk about storage capacity. So it can be written up to 360 terabytes worth of data.
Oh, wow. That's
360
right. So, okay.
terabytes.
So, just a little context. Your typical hard drive, that you may pick up with a computer nowadays is about a terabyte.
Right.
So think 360 of those.
360 1 terabyte drives, all on one small little disk.
Yeah, that's crazy.
It's insane. So let's go into some of the specifics of how it works. So the writing of it is actually done, of course, like with everything, you have reads and writes of, reads with lasers. So they actually read and write with laser on this one. And it's, the laser is called, the name escapes me right now, a femtosecond laser, which is a laser close in same composition and intensity as like a LASIK eye surgery laser. Okay. So that's kind of what we're talking about with that. Now, the way the disc is constructed is you've got the quartz, but inside you have these nanostructures of semiconductors inside. And so the way it's written, we've actually went from, what everybody refers to as like 3D and everything. This is actually called 5D storage. And if you go to Google and type that in, it'll give you a little more information on it. But basically now, instead of XYZ axis of storage of information, now we've moved into 2 extra dimensions that have to do with light because the laser reads and writes it, right?
Sure.
So with the 5-dimension read and write, you've got the 2 extra dimensions now are the slow axis, which is the speed and the intensity that the light travels, because it's variabling of how fast and how intense it travels.
Okay, sure, that makes sense.
That's the 4th dimension that they refer to, slow axis. So then on the 5th dimension of axis, that is what they refer to as the strength of retardance.
Okay.
And so whenever it's reading, it's impressing, the light through these semiconductors and writing onto those.
Okay.
And so the strength of retardance is basically there's multiple different layers of those semiconductors that it can write on, and how the light interacts with those semiconductors.
Okay, gotcha.
So, which is one of the reasons why it can hold so much data on such a small space, because instead of dealing with 3 dimensions now we're not only dealing with 2 extra dimensions, but one of those dimensions having to do with the semiconductors has multiple layers just in one row of semiconductors.
Can I just say, I hate how they call it dimensions, though.
Yeah,
because I mean, if you think about it, we're in a 3-dimensional world. There is no other dimension unless you consider time of dimension, and that's a whole other discussion we're obviously not getting into.
Right, we're not mathematicians,
but anyway,
however,
it bugs me how
in mathematics
it's
that's how they refer it to.
Kind of like everybody, when they do all these marketings, like if something moves around a lot, they call it 4D something or 5D something.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say I hate that.
It is what it is.
Nonetheless,
we're techies, not mathematicians.
Exactly.
So.
Well, anyway,
some of us more than others. Anyway, so yeah, and so that's what they refer to as the fifth dimension, which is what part of the reasons why it gives it such large data storage.
Sure.
So, now as far as kind of going back to the resilience part, quartz is resistant to heat, literally up to 1,000 degrees Celsius. So they're estimating, now this is a very basic test, and most of the most of the journals that you read on this will say this as well. The tests are very basic because, of course, nobody's going to be able to test over 190 billion years. But supposedly at room temperature, quartz crystal can hold its data, its information, up to, literally, they're estimating around 130 billion years.
Is that all? God,
That's all. That's all, man.
I think they could do better.
So, it's pretty cool. We're kind of, honestly, I feel like growing up reading, fantasy and sci-fi novels, like we're finally kind of starting to make that stretch into, what everybody envisioned the future being.
Right. We can't get that flying car, but
no,
we can store all the movies about it forever.
You bet. Now, let's go into some of the cons of this, because obviously this is emerging technology, which was first theorized in 2013, and they've been working on it since. So it is very new technology compared to some of the stuff we've talked about. So, of course, some of the pros that you've got is storage forever, a mass amount of storage, highly resistant against heat, cold, as well as, scarring and physical fracturing. And it can store a mass amount of data. So one of the problems that it is right now, and I will definitely, go ahead and say right now, I don't foresee this going mainstream except for mass data solution for quite a while.
Right. I was kind of thinking this is probably going to be like a data center thing.
Exactly.
Kind of like how data centers still they use like the tape magnetics backup storage for mass data storage.
Right, absolutely. So it'll probably be involved in, mass data storage like that, as well as mass data storage on, not for read-write, but mass data storage of permanent information on like cloud storage capacity and stuff like that. Because of the fact that when the laser writes, the disk at this point, now this could change in the future, I don't really foresee it changing. But if they come up with, some new crazy rewrite technology with the laser, it's possible. But as far as right now, you can only write the information to the disk once.
Right, so it'd be literally a permanent solution.
Right, absolutely.
So I'm assuming is like reading the information right now pretty tough? Because it sounds like, the more complicated, when you're storing stuff, especially with layers and layers and layers, that would make it more complicated to also read.
Absolutely.
Specific data off each individual layer.
So the laser that they're using to do the writing and the reading is pretty much scientific use right now. You're not going to see this in any, everyday application where, you buy a new computer and it has this super advanced laser in it. So what they're using it right now for is, of course, it's just in its testing phase. It hasn't been launched or prototyped for commercial market as far as mass storage solutions.
Right.
So we're still in that, kind of beta phase, I guess you'd call it. Maybe even alpha phase.
Yeah, probably more
Definitely alpha.
Definitely.
So we've still got quite a few years to go before we even see it come close to hitting the commercial market.
They could just launch it on Steam Early Access.
Yeah, hey man,
Steam's
got that stuff.
I've seen worse stuff.
You ain't kidding, man. Especially ever since the Asset Store launched. Oh my god. But anyway, so going back to Quartz, we're definitely not going to see this in commercial market. I would suspect for another 10 years. maybe a little sooner, maybe a little later, give or take some. So, and unless they come up with some way to allow it to be written to again, it's definitely not going to be a mass commercial market product solution.
Right.
It's going to be geared toward a specific thing.
Right. That'd be a specifically archival at that point.
Right. Absolutely. Which, they've already started doing archive things like a lot of the scientific works, mathematic works that we have up until now. Apparently, they thought that Superman would be a fun project to put on one of the discs, like 1976 Superman. But, now that we're looking at that solution, that's a potential way to save a lot of information that we could go back and look at later and use for future projects.
Right.
As a matter of fact, like, one of my favorite games growing up was Icewind Dale 2. And unfortunately, if you're into, the RPG market and everything, they've been re-releasing all of the Baldur's Gates and even the original Icewind Dale for Enhanced Edition, which are great games. Thank you, Beamdog Studio. I love those games. But they can't, unfortunately, without rebuilding the game entirely, do a remastered version of Icewind Dale 2, because all of the source code has been lost.
Yeah, and you've probably heard that about a few games recently.
Yeah.
I know I read one recently, but the game's kind of escaping me now.
Yeah. I mean, it happens, you have these game producers make a game, and then something happens, they have to declare bankruptcy or they get bought out by something else. And
I just remember what it was. The remastered Mass Effects that are coming out.
Oh, yeah.
Here in a month. One of the DLCs is missing from one of the games because they lost the source code of that DLC.
Right, absolutely. It happens. People get acquired, people get bought out, and in all of that moving, data or, backup data and stuff gets lost.
Yeah, or, gets corrupted or, hard drive goes bad. Anything could happen.
However, potentially, once this maybe hits the mass storage mainstream market in, 10 to 15 years, that could potentially be eliminated.
Yeah.
Every project you do, you just throw it on one of those glass discs, and now it's good for
we
130 billion years.
we could start archiving our podcast on that.
Heck yeah, man. I'm down. Let's do it.
We'll let you know how that goes in 15, 20 years.
But yeah, so... it's kind of interesting, and that goes into, a lot of what you were talking about with your mass storage, Not that it's going to be that way anytime soon, but, maybe in our kids' lives, it'll be a pretty simple solution to go out, grab one, collect all your photos and your family members or family memories and put them all on a glass disc that probably by then you can put into a holograph machine and
then
show
get your
on
family
your wall.
Members. Then get your family members.
Then get your family members. So yeah, that's what we got today.
All right. Well, I hope that didn't screw up our recording there. No, I think we're still recording. So, but anyway, yeah. Storage is going to be necessary forever because I think the last article I read about something like this is by like 2025 we would be producing like 25 zettabytes data a year.
Yeah. Because Seagate already ships 3 zettabytes worth of storage solutions to companies and people who buy their product privately.
Right. So, and just to give you an idea, 1,000 gigabytes is a terabyte.
Yep.
1,000 terabytes is a petabyte.
Yep.
1,000 petabytes is an exabyte. Then 1,000 exabytes is a zettabyte.
Yeah.
Now,
zettabytes.
In 4 years' time, we will be making 25 zettabytes of data worldwide a year.
Yep.
Ridiculous.
And, I think everybody kind of saw that we were going to be going to needing a huge jump in, information, which is why when I was talking about the other day, a lot of SSD manufacturers, memory manufacturers, period, are looking for, kind of that next jump to get more data for read-write as well, not just mass storage. Because of the fact that when you have the cloud come out, all of that information's being transferred back and forth, written and rewritten. That's a lot of information to transfer and write and read, erase, write, read. So, you know, once the cloud was kind of released, we definitely have been moving strides forward, even leaps forward in the amount of data that we need.
Right.
So
yeah, well, that's a great topic today, I think. And I hope y'all all enjoyed it. You got anything else about it today?
that's all I got. So let's go ahead and wrap her up.
Sounds good. So make sure you hit that little bell down there, hit subscribe.
Like, comment, subscribe.
Yeah. Bring the comments. You know, we try to, you know, keep it on for at least a few days, you know, and I think I get notifications for them.
I'm not gonna lie, I was literally sitting in the chair the other day and going back through all of our old videos to see if we had any more comments. I mean, so
yeah,
if you got something you want to know, man, anybody, just you know, leave a comment, let us know, ask a question.
Yeah, and give ideas. We like ideas too. We're gonna run out of them one day.
Indeed.
So,
Hopefully not, but
yeah. Yep. Thanks for watching.